Hello, everybody. Hope you're all doing well. Welcome to this special bonus episode of In the Round. I just want to say a big thank you to all of you for listening and supporting in whichever way you choose to support the podcast. It means so much, and that you're, enjoying this mad project of mine. I think last week or 2 weeks ago was the 2-year anniversary of the podcast starting. 2 years already. Long may it continue. I have no plans to stop, so it will continue. Now that we're on a season break between number 6 and 7, time for a bonus episode. There may be another one coming up in about 3 weeks, possibly. Not sure yet. Conversation is in motion. But here's a sort of a post-season 6 bonus episode. Just one interview this time with a guy called Ollie Steadman, who, as we'll find out when you listen to my chat with him, embarked upon a project in 2025 called 365 Days of Folk. Sort of inspired by John Bowden's A Folk Song a Day project, and where he learned a new folk song every day and made a video of it and put it on YouTube. And yeah, I'll put a link to the whole project on YouTube in the show notes. But Ollie got in touch because his project has reached, as he'll tell you, has reached far beyond 365 days, and doesn't seem like he's going to stop either. So fantastic, these sort of long-running projects. Anyway, enough of me rambling. Hope you enjoy my interview with Ollie Steadman. Well, hello, and a big welcome to this bonus episode of In the Round to Ollie Steadman. Hello.
Hello, Matt. Thank you very much for having me on In the Round. It's a dream come true, to be quite blunt. I've been following you guys for ages, and it's a really pleasure to be asked on.
It can only have been a dream for the last 2 years at the very most.
Yes.
It's not a lifelong dream. I hope someone forms a podcast that I can come on.
I mean, in terms of my project, it's 2 of the 5 years, which is a pretty good stretch of time. So that's why I call it ages, because when I think about the life that has been spent in the past 5 years trying to get this thing off the ground and finally succeeding in the past few months, you guys have been there for a good chunk of that time, and certainly have been a lot of the inspiration and the motivation for me to keep going. So thank you.
Oh, lovely. Yeah, I was just thinking about this the other day. Season 6 ended 2 weeks ago, and because the day this goes out is the Wednesday 13th of May, we're recording this 2 days earlier on the Monday 11th. And so last week, but 2 years ago last week, was the very start of season 1 of the podcast. So it's now been pretty much 2 years.
Yes,
since I started this ridiculous.
I hope someone's giving
project.
you some sort of anniversary, celebration there, the podcast birthday cake, or
maybe I'll order a takeaway curry tonight or something as a celebration. Not that I need an excuse to order a takeaway curry, but yeah, it's mad that I realise I've been doing this for 2 years and I haven't lost my mind yet.
Yeah,
but it's
that's certainly a sentiment I can share with the sort of routine and the regularity that's been enforced by my project, which we'll get into. But, a song a day or a song a week. A lot of people do this.
It's that regularity that
thing.
It's actually quite hard to keep a regular thing going like that. I had, before the podcast, during the lockdowns, I tried a couple of regular projects on YouTube. People can see my failed a tune a week project where it was an attempt to learn every tune I know on my concertina, because I play most of my tunes on the melodeon or the fiddle, but I play the duet concertina. It was let's at random make sure I can play a different tune every week on my concertina, and I got about 25 or 26 tunes in, and then I just stopped. And I did then try a song a week, video myself singing one of the songs I know. And I got as far as 2, and then I stopped. So, but the podcast is my 3rd attempt at a regular project, and it appears to be working.
Excellent. There's something in that word, possibly the word mind-numbing, when we embark on these projects, and they start to punish us for having been that ambitious or that silly, maybe in my case, because for the first 3 years, 4 years, I think it was the numbing, the boredom after a while, and I just kind of couldn't sustain the
I
inspiration.
know. Well, thankfully for the podcast, I interview two people in each episode, so I do talk to other people as part of the
That's
project, which has helped
yes,
a lot
that's
actually.
perhaps the secret. Yeah,
You can include other people in it,
yeah, yes.
So I'm always very commending people who do these podcasts where,
Mm,
particularly American podcasts, I found where it's like one person talking to the
yeah,
microphone
yeah.
for 45 minutes. There's a podcast I listen to now, another folk song podcast called The Folk Files. American woman called Olivia Harding, and she does one song a month, and it's just her talking. She's done all the research as much as she
Mm.
can, and it's her talking to the mic for like a half an hour. And
Oh,
I thoroughly commend her for that because I couldn't do that.
mm.
What I can do is ask other people questions, and they provide all the information,
Yes, a
which is
dialogue rather than a monologue. It's
yeah,
yeah, maybe I'll try that
it's
sometime soon.
your
Yeah,
next
thank you.
project.
Yes.
Anyway, here's some podcast statistics. I did a 2-year anniversary post on the podcast's social media, but then I shared it on my personal social media with some statistics. So, for example, we about 2 years of podcasting. That's 6 seasons of the podcast. That's 60 songs covered. That's the first 60 songs in the Round Index,
Mm.
50 of which are child ballads, which is
Yes.
quite a lot. The next, because I know the next time we come to on the podcast, come to a period with no child ballads in it for a while, will be the summer of 2028.
Okay.
That's just the way
That's
Steve
quite
Roud
something.
indexed it.
Yes.
And 10 other folk songs, and we've had about over 35,000 downloads now across the 2 years, which is
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
And one
Well
and a
done.
half years of Patreon, we've covered 46 more songs through the Patreon, one of which is a child ballad, and um, then the other 39 are other folk songs, standard folk songs, including 6 Christmas songs or Christmas carols
Yes.
that have round
Yes.
numbers.
Yeah.
So that's a total of 96 songs I've done so far,
Goodness.
which is 0.2% of the Round
Yeah.
Index.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how long you keep it going, and I hope that it's indefinite.
Well, so do I. I quite like this gig.
Yeah.
I'm really
I
enjoying
love,
it.
and I really take great encouragement from hearing what inspires people to start these projects or get into folk music more generally, and what it is in folk songs and ballads and tunes that sort of catches their imagination or their emotion and brightens their life a little bit. And
Absolutely.
whatever the format and however many the songs, for me it always comes back to what's going to be the tearjerker effect on different people from different places and get their hearts racing a little bit and maybe get them up and dancing even.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me now, having done the podcast for 2 years and having been exposed to such enthusiasm from the people who've done the history half of each episode,
Yes.
that's seeped into me. And now I get overly excited about the history of the songs, almost more than the song itself, which is really silly. I should be, I mean, I do sing the songs and I love singing them, but I think the history and that stuff is equally
Yeah.
as important as
Yes.
the singing of the song now.
Well, yes, that's exactly one of the most important reasons I'm in this whole scene and this routine is I didn't come from England. I'm originally from South Africa, and I've always felt a bit sort of out of place and very terribly homesick. And this has been a way for me to pick up not only the music of the British Isles, but also the history, very importantly, because I just didn't study any of anything but African history in
Right.
school. And so for me, studying the Tudors via the means of the Tudor era ballads was really like watching a sort of cliffhanger crime thriller series. I didn't know who was going to be beheaded or married or survived or whatever. And I was saying to people around me, "Don't tell me what happens in the end. I want to know, how many wives he had." But that history it was brand new to me. So and
Yeah.
that's ongoing. I've done 495 songs as of today, and
Wow.
I've still got so much history to discover.
Yeah.
Which
And yeah, you're coming on the Patreon this week, in fact. So if people are listening to this on the day it goes out, 13th of May, tomorrow, the 14th of May, on the Patreon, we'll be looking at one of your 3 song choices. You're coming on for. You've picked 3 songs. I've found the history guests, and we're doing the episodes now. And so yeah, it's people can we're finding more history stuff, and I've just come off an interview this morning with Vic Gammon for your second song choice,
Yes.
and Vic Gammon is just an absolute legend. He's one of my most regular contributors. He's also I've known him since before I was born, I suppose, and and he was the degree program director when I did the folk and music degree at Newcastle University,
Right.
and his lectures were some of the best I ever had. Just his passion and knowledge and enthusiasm for this stuff is unparalleled. And in terms of what you were saying with the history, sort of history of the country side of things, I remember his first ever lecture he did for us on the folk degree in our year group was he said what he looks at is the history of the people,
Yeah.
not the history of the kings and queens. Because what you get, certainly what we had in school when I was a kid, was history lessons. It was always kings and queens
Yeah.
and all
Absolutely.
that, and that doesn't give you a look at what the country was like as a history. That just gives you the royalty. Whereas
Yeah.
Gammon always said the people are what makes this country up. We're what formed the country. The history of the people is a far better look at the history of this country, and the songs and our arts and our culture is a brilliant way into the history of the people.
That's it. That's exactly it. And there's so much less that you can get from that kind of monarchistic, great heroes perspective. Whereas if you just think about the sheer number of different characters and people and professions and places that are represented when you study the history of the folk,
Yeah,
it's a much richer way to learn about a society.
exactly. And in a sense, yeah, I highly recommend anything Vic Gammon's written, but he has written a book, still quite expensive. Death, Drink, and Desire. It's called. It's all about the rude stuff in folk songs. The
Okay.
drinking and sex, basically. But it's a brilliant book. And also,
Yeah.
if anyone hasn't read it, Steve Roud's Folk Song in England is
Yeah.
the seminal text for our age. I think
Of course. Of course.
astonishing
I
read.
The other route text I love is mischief, the mischief year.
Oh,
The
I've not
every
read that
day.
yet.
It's
Yeah.
every day in the English calendar from what does he say? Yeah, from Twelfth Night to Mischief Day. I mean, I've read it so many times. I should really know this. But each year, as the weeks roll by, I turn to this as my reference for how I should be celebrating any given day. The other one is you can see it in the background of the camera there. Ben Edge's folk rituals calendar, and so
Ah.
we're in May now, which is the most prolific month for folk ceremonies and traditions and celebrations.
Oh wow.
Everything from the May mornings in Oxford and Padstow to the Haxey Hood stuff. And there's so much that happens in every part of the UK celebrating traditions. And my way into this has been through music to realize that there are musical traditions specifically where if you just learn a few of the dance moves or a bit of the harmony to sing along to the ballads, even if you don't know the lyrics, it can be incredibly fun to turn up and be part of that latent society that still exists. People think it's sort of old and outdated and it's faded into history, but actually it is the history of our time that's still happening. And it's amazing to see the young generations coming up and starting to celebrate and learn where they come from
Yeah.
and and steer the country in the direction that they want to see its folk traditions head to.
Absolutely. Oh, there we go. I just found Steve Roud's book, which I don't have yet. The English Year, a
That's
month
it.
by month guide to the nation's customs and
Yeah.
festivals
Yeah.
from May Day to Mischief Night.
Got it. I almost had it from
You're
12.
very
I thought
close.
it
You're
was
very
12. But it
close.
was because 12th night and 12 cakes and all the stuff that happens around that time of the year features so strongly in the opening chapter. So I've read that a
Yeah,
few times. But of course, yeah, May morning to Mischief night.
that's right. Excellent.
A
Or,
great
or
book.
must buy a copy of that sometime.
Mm.
It's
That book is one of the main reasons I started my adventure into learning a folk song a day, and
ah
it's those histories and traditions that really matter to me. And I often find that I'll get to 9 p.m. on a given day, and I haven't decided what folk song I'm going to learn that day. So I'm a bit sort of a procrastinator and a last minute approach to this whole thing. But I'll always find that if I flick through a history book or I head to a folk session, a sing around in a pub, or just go to any of Steve's books there's so many to choose from, as you well know from the Roud catalogue you're walking slowly through. And so there's always something, and I'll always find that it's not just learning for the sake of it, it's learning because there's something resonating in the song, and the song comes and picks me in a way.
Yeah.
That's why I like to leave it that late. I don't like to sort of have a list that I'm working from. And in a way, that's why I failed the first 3 or 4 years that I attempted this. Yeah, started in 21.
Wow.
And even by 2024, the wheels would come off after just 6 weeks. And the reasons was that I was using John Bowden's list, and I was for however a brilliant list it is, as in his original A Folk Song a Day project, and however much it inspired me. And he's been in touch to say he's glad that I'm following in his footsteps somewhat. I think people have to go out and find their own song choices. And to follow someone else's list slavishly, however good it is, was just never destined to work. And then as soon as I started making up my own list on the day, choosing the song on the day based on how I was feeling and what songs came to me through the ether, 2025, that was the year that finally I made it through and sang all 365 songs
Well, there we
in
go.
365 days. You've got to have a sort of agency and an ownership, I think, in selecting what songs to sing.
So you have neatly steered this conversation towards what it should have been. So yeah, 365 days of folk. My first question would have been, how did this start? And so I guess you've kind of answered that. But so 2021, you had a go at this. So was this a sort of lockdown project then? Was that the idea?
Partly, yes. I have always been interested in folk music, but I hadn't really had any early education in it. I hadn't been brought up, say, learning fiddle tunes or going to sessions, partly because I only arrived in the UK at age 15, and music was not as prevalent in my childhood as it could have been. Although saying that, in South Africa, where I grew up, I was spending a lot of time in the Drakensberg Mountains and in KwaZulu-Natal learning the languages and the music there. But it's a very different tradition. So lots of choral music that learned by ear, lots of dancing. You've got Maskanda guitar styles. Mbaqanga is more of a city beat. And isiXathamiya is a choir format that you have in the mountains. So I'm versed in some of that. But when I came to the UK, one of the reasons I was so homesick was I didn't have access to any of that anymore. And then lockdown came along after some years, and the nascent education I had started to receive in trad folk by going to folk festivals and sing-arounds and just stumbling across tradition by mistake. I was suddenly, taken from under my feet. We all had that the rug ripped away when we were locked down and couldn't get out to meet the people and do the things we wanted to do and learn songs. After a few weeks of lockdown, I realized, that's what's missing. For everyone, it was a difficult time in different ways, and for some, it was, say, the great outdoors that they missed, or going clubbing or something. But for me, it was easy to realize that it was the folk scene that I was missing. I couldn't get to any sessions. So I thought back to John Bowden, who had inspired me when he first did his A Folk Song a Day catalogue back in 2014, 2015.
I was about to say it's over 10 years old now, that thing, isn't it? It's
Yeah, well, the funny thing is, a lot of people, when I talk to them about my project, and I say John Bowden was an inspiration, they say, oh yeah, because John Bowden during lockdowns did A Folk Song a Day, didn't he? And I say, absolutely not. You've sort of, it's such a brilliant project that it's suffused the sort of collective imagination, as this comfort blanket, and people think that he came up with it as a lockdown thing, but it had been there for 6 or 7 years already.
That's right. Yeah, yeah.
It's quite amazing.
And even the guy Andy Turner, who then followed on and did a
Yes,
folk
Focus
song a
on the
week
Week. Yeah,
for 500 weeks or something,
yeah,
and occasionally still grows.
yeah.
That was before COVID as well. That was
Yes,
with the
but
pandemic as
people
well.
still perceive them as having arrived only as a result of lockdowns. It's as if people needed to be locked down to realize just how many brilliant people were doing these sorts of projects already. But
Yeah,
I think if I tried to speculate a bit about John and Andy, and there are several other people who've done these sorts of things, it might be that they were spending a lot of time, say, in tour buses, because John's came up when he was busy with Bellahead.
that's right. Yeah,
And
yeah,
that's a sort of a lockdown. If you're just on the tour bus, it's kind of going into a different time zone every day on a busy tour. You want to reconnect with, and I know this from my schedule with Stornoway, who I play bass with. We're often on the road for weeks at a time. You're missing family and home and routine, and thinking, what would be really handy is if I just had one thing that I did every day consistently. It would be a real a rebalancing sort of tonic. Um,
yeah,
but the other thing that inspired me, apart from trying to comfort and energize during that lockdown time, and to pay respect to John's project by echoing his way of doing it, was that I had realized folk isn't meant to be a museum piece and just a sort of archive of frozen in history. Um, we're meant to interact with it on a day-to-day level. And I was thinking, can I really call myself a folk musician if I'm not doing a bit of music every day? I want it to be an active social tool or a technology. And then what better way to do that than to embrace technology, as in social media, and send my songs out to people all around the world and see if they like what I'm doing. So that was the aspect that led to posting on social media. Because unlike John's project, I'm not recording them terribly professionally, and I'm not putting them, say, on Spotify where people could listen and I could gain a royalty from it, for instance. It's never been quite that structured. I just All that matters is I learn the song, record it once to a sort of sufficient level of performance quality, and then get that filmed and shared so that there's
yeah.
evidence that I've done it.
I mean, even John said that when he started the project, he actually only had about 250 songs in his
Yeah,
repertoire,
yeah,
and he realized that over that year he had to learn about 100
yeah,
more.
yeah,
And so even that was
yeah.
a hard task in the end. But
Yes. Yes, one of the things we corresponded about when he first got in touch to say he was glad I was doing this. This was early 2022, I think, on my second attempt. I said, yeah, thank you very much for the encouragement, and I need a lot of it because I'm starting from zero. If anyone had asked me
right,
back then how many ballads I knew, it would have been quite embarrassing. And I tried to sort of write in a journal like how am I going to do this? And I realized that it might have been as few as 3 or 4. So I was
right,
genuinely learning a new one every day, multiple verses, and so the temptation is to pick the short ones, the easy ones, the easy melodies. But over time, the fact that you're pushing your brain and your sort of neural pathways through this thing of learning a new song every day, learning a new song every day, and sometimes accompanied. So sometimes I play them on the Anglo concertina, some guitar, all sorts of instruments. It's just that learning sort of chemistry in the brain gets activated every day. And I have found that it's a real improvement on, say, memory and the ability to learn not just music, but other things. I've become a lot faster in that.
absolutely. I mean, I've that thing. I've learnt songs, since I've been doing folk music stuff, like 20 years ish now, and I've got a database of every song I can sing or every song I've learnt that I could revise. If someone asked me to sing
Yes.
it, I could
Yeah.
spend a couple of days just refreshing it.
Yeah.
But I mean, I've got a database and I haven't updated it in a few weeks, and so there's a couple of new songs that
Yeah.
we've learnt with Culverig that should go on the list. But it currently stands at 99 songs, but quite a lot of them don't have round numbers, so do they count? I mean,
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
probably
Yeah.
do count.
Oh,
But
if we want,
if we're
if
going
we want
with
to get into databasing as genuinely would be fascinated to talk about the technological side of this. So,
yeah, yeah,
because I work in data management as my day job. And
All
so
right.
my tip would be to think about the primary key you're using on the database table and not to use round number
Oh no, I'm not.
because
It's
that's
alphabetical, but I've put the
brilliant.
round number next to the ones that have them just
Yes.
so that I know what
Yeah,
they
yeah,
are. Just because I'm in the round world now, so
yeah.
I put round numbers next to everything.
Yes.
But if you take away the ones that don't have round numbers, because if you want to call them not folk songs, I mean, there's a couple of Disney songs in there
Oh,
because
yeah.
I do Disney songs sometimes.
Yeah.
It's probably down to about 80 songs, and that's probably not that great having sung folk songs for 20 years. But somewhat, in the end, the more I've become like a professional musician, like in a couple of touring bands, the only time I have to learn songs is learning, songs for the next tour
On the go, exactly. Yeah.
on the go.
Yeah.
And because when I was in the Dovetail Trio back in the 2010s, I sang, maybe a third of the songs in that
Mm.
band, and so I had, a certain amount of songs I'd learned, but I didn't have the time or the brain capacity to learn
Yeah.
any more. And so actually, my song learning, I mean, I'm quite quick at learning songs if I put the effort in, but in terms of the number of songs I've learned, it's been quite a slow process in terms of the overall volume of songs.
Yeah. Yeah.
And but now that Culverake, people will know that Culverake is sort of hitting the pause button in September for an unforeseeable amount of time. I'm gonna take my foot off the brakes in just learning
Yeah.
more songs for myself,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so hopefully
Well,
that number will go up quite a long way. So
yes. Well, if you need any suggestions on databasing technology, I would say Airtable is incredibly handy.
Airtable, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm
Yeah.
just using
Beats a spreadsheet anytime.
Excel, Microsoft Excel, which has its uses. But
Yeah.
Airtable, I'll bear that in mind.
Absolutely.
Steve Rowd, this is tangent now. Steve Rowd uses Cardbox.
Oh, right. That's quite a
He
surprise.
loves Cardbox.
I've
He
never
thinks
heard of it.
it's like a build your own database
Right.
software. So he can create a custom database
Yeah.
that works specifically for the route index in terms of what he needs it to be. But
I will
it's
definitely check
not
that out.
an Apple thing, so I can't use it
Yeah. Hmm.
unless I pay a certain amount of money and get a program that allows me to play Windows based software on my MacBook.
Yeah.
But Cardbox
Goodness.
is like a design your own database sort of
Yeah.
software thing, which is
I'll
Steve loves
definitely
it,
check that out.
but yeah, no one else seems to understand how it works.
Yeah.
He's used it for so long
Fascinating.
that he's like a tech wizard at it.
Well, one of the main reasons I like talking about these technological aspects is because
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think they are the key to how to make the projects accessible to as many people as possible. There are plenty of people out there who say come from an even less musical background than I did, and I've talked about how I could have had more musical tuition growing up, but there are people for whom they don't really encounter music in a very welcoming or inclusive way till much later in life, and maybe they never learn to sing and they believe they can't sing. And anyway, for someone like that, or people who have less time or can't get to the venues where the best folk music is played, sometimes the best way to take that first step in is via a really well designed little database that can scroll all the songs, easily click through to, say, a video of someone performing it beautifully. And I love thinking about how technology can open the gates to give access to a lot more people. And so, yeah, these Airtables that I've designed are hopefully very pretty and very nice to look at. And they work on mobile, that sort of thing. I'm thinking about
ah,
how the
very
project
good.
can
Yeah,
get the folk music out there to as many people as possible, past any sort of gatekeeping bottlenecks that might otherwise have stopped them experiencing the
yeah.
music that they should experience.
I mean, yeah, behind the scenes, Steve uses Cardbox for the Radix, but
Mm.
obviously on the internet for the public, it's all available on the Vaughan Williams Memorial Library
Yeah, of course. Very
archive,
well
which is
designed. Yeah.
it's nice. It's not sometimes it's not the easiest, but once you get in the swing of it, it's
Mm.
relatively straightforward.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
what is missing is a mobile app version,
Yeah.
and
100%.
I just think it's too unwieldy. It's too big a database in a sense. It's too big a collection to sort of
Yeah.
condense into a mobile phone version of the Vaughan Williams route
Yes.
index. It's because the route index has like over 750,000 entries now,
Yes.
and we're almost at 50,000 separate numbers, separate songs,
Yes.
and that's quite a hefty challenge for someone who wants to convert that into a mobile app,
Yeah, absolutely.
And who's going to fund that?
Well,
Who's going to fund the person who wants to take that job on?
that is key. That's another aspect of all of these projects, which people, I think, don't tend to venture into because they think it's too dry. But actually, it's the key to everything: the technology, and then how to pay for building these
It's their time.
experiences.
It's their time, let alone anything else.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah. So
Well,
when you bringing this back to the
yeah.
365 Days of Folk,
Mm,
so when you finally did the project that actually came to fruition in
yeah,
the finished article, so that was across 2025.
that's right.
When you, I don't know if you can think about this, when you started that one, how many songs did you have already in your brain or in prep for the project?
I started.
Or conversely, how many songs did you have to learn to reach
Mm,
365?
I'm Yeah, I learned at least 300 for that year. If I
Wow.
reused any from previous years, it was only in the most desperate circumstances, like I was away on tour and I couldn't get to recording equipment, and I'd go back
Okay.
to say, and on 1st of January as well, I also did January Man, but that's more of a tradition. So I've always done that on 1st of January because John did that on his one, and I
Sure.
sort of want to pay homage. But when I got through to 366 on the 1st of January this year, I then deliberately did not do January Man. I picked something new. I think I did New Year's Carol. So
Nice.
yeah, to answer that, it really was no more than a handful of songs had I actually learned before, and I did genuinely learn them all on the day. I tend also to shy away from trying to think too much about what I want to do, say, a week from now, except in one or two circumstances. One is that I was incredibly inspired to do a witch-themed, occult-themed season. And in that case, I did.
Was that across October?
It was actually this January. So in the quiet
Oh,
season after
nice.
Christmas,
Okay.
around 12th night, I went to see the most incredible, um, uh, the most incredible play. It was actually a musical, and it had lots of original songs scored for it by a fantastic composer called Daisy Shute. And she'd written this piece about the witch hunts in Pendle in, I think, this 17th century. And I found it such a moving performance. The songs were beautifully crafted, and the history that I'd never even been aware of, having not come from England. It was there in front of me for the first time, learning about all the witches and how tragic it was. They were all put to death for the most ludicrous, made-up cases, and their names, in many cases, were sort of rubbed out from history. So we don't even know who they were or what age they were when they died, all this stuff about them. And I wanted to sort of memorialize them by singing a witch-themed season. So I did everything from, say, 12 Witches by Steel Span, as in not by them, but their version is the one I
Yeah,
picked
sure.
to mimic. To Luli Luli, it's the one that's most sort of Wicker Man of the ballads I've learnt. In that orchard there was a bower, and in the bower there was a bed, and in the bed there was a knight, and it was bleeding night and day. And I love songs like that take something of the spooky pagan Albion and infuse it with characters you can follow and
Yeah.
really fall for. And then the other exception to that rule I have of learning the song on the day and not thinking too far ahead about what I'm going to learn was the Blackbird season. And I realized that I think there are six songs, apart from Paul McCartney's Blackbird. There are actually six trad folk ballads from, Royal Blackbird to all the others. And I'm really thrilled to be going into that one on a subsequent episode with you.
And yeah, that
Because,
episode goes out tomorrow. If you're listening
yes,
on the day it goes out, then tomorrow, Thursday the 14th, that's going to be the episode on Royal Blackbird, round 2375.
yeah,
We'll come to that later on. But yeah, and so I noticed, because I know when John Bowden did his Focusing a Day, that was all not necessarily English folk songs, but the British Isles and American, but English language, I guess, is the sort of the
Yes.
broader sort of not constraint, but like that's what he did.
Hmm.
Whereas your one, you didn't restrict yourself to just English language stuff, did you? You set
Yes.
yourself another challenge.
Now, well, that's been a really handy way of refreshing the project if I'm finding I'm in a bit of a rut and it's sort of perhaps a tired choice I'm making each day from the same old lists of ballads. I'll say, let's go to Japan for a day, and I'll just
Sure.
go and say someone like John Wilkes, who lived in Japan for a while and
Yeah, that's
has
right.
learned the best traditional English guitar styles, but also a lot of Japanese
That's right.
traditions. I
John was on the podcast in season 4, I think,
Yeah, what a legend.
or season 3. It blurs a bit in my mind, but he was on for the Sir Lionel episode, the
Yes.
Bob Sorilis one. Yeah.
Wonderful. And it was his version of Torianse, I think, which was a Japanese song. There's another Japanese one, Sakura, and then a nursery rhyme there I've learned from there as well. Then I've reached back into my sort of personal history and learned songs in Zulu and Xhosa from South Africa. I've learned French, Catalan, Spanish, German. Oh, the German season was good fun as well because I was actually in Germany to do some music, and I thought, what better way to commemorate this trip and sort of seal it in my memory as an enjoyable time than to actually learn some of the songs from my physical surroundings and not
Nice,
just keep
nice.
learning the ballads from over the sea.
Yeah.
So I spent a week learning German songs. And I wouldn't not call myself a polyglot by any means. I haven't actually learned to speak many of these languages, but learning to sing in them is such an enlightening experience. And I think it teaches you something of how to think in that language or in that culture. And so it really feel like it helps me um, develop a connection and perhaps even a sense of belonging with the place that I'm visiting through the song.
Yeah, there was a side tangent slightly. I'm trying to find it now. There is a singer on the folk scene, singer-songwriter called Pete Morton. Did you come across Pete
I
Morton?
haven't.
He's a phenomenal songwriter. Not necessarily all political stuff. Most of it's just observational stuff and things. But he's been around since the late '80s, and I've recorded on a couple of his albums. And he made an album. I'm trying to find it now because I can't. Otherwise, if I don't find it written down, I won't be able to pronounce the album title. Um, and he made an album in 2008 called Casa Abierta, and
Ah,
it's an album of. Oh, there we go. I've just found it on a different site. One second. There we go. It's a whole album of songs in different languages. And so each song is in another language, and they're all, I think, songs from that country. And
wonderful.
it was just an experiment to like he worked with it was 10 tracks. He worked with 10 language coaches to get it up to speed, and then the much missed now comic poet Les Barker, who was on the folk scene for a long
Yes.
time, translated Pete's most famous song called "Another Train" into Welsh, and
Ah,
Pete sang that as one of the final tracks on the album. Um, but yeah, that's so yeah. It's not it's not a thing that happens very often. You get people who deliberately try and learn not learn other languages, but
mm,
learn songs that are not in their own native language for a project.
yes. Well, I think one of the fears that stops people doing it is that there's always that risk that you're seen as an outsider appropriating a
There's the
culture
cultural
or a language.
appropriation thing.
Yes.
There's always a worry of that.
Yes. What is culturally appropriate, after all?
Yeah,
To
indeed.
and I think what I've tried to do in terms of sort of tightrope walk is um, reference wherever I am writing, say, a caption under the recording that I'm sharing. I'm trying to reference, say, the artist whose version inspired me and reference something about the tradition that's referenced in the song, um, and to point people towards it and say, go visit, Japan, or go learn the language for yourself, or here's how to find out more. And so I tried to make myself into a signaler and someone who points people in the direction of something constructive and not and as yeah, not to just take something for my own gain. And I think I do a good job of that because I've never had anybody complain, and I have had several people comment, really positively and say, "I learned so much. Thank you for posting this kind of thing. Do more."
Yeah, I mean it's great. I think yes, I think the more people do, the more songs get out there, and get shared,
Yeah,
and whether that's stuff from the English language canon or from elsewhere, it's
yeah,
just share as much as you can, and it all benefits everybody. It all
yeah.
spread
One of the
the
most
spread the love, spread the information.
yes.
It can't do any harm unless you're really an awful person.
That's
But
it.
you
One
know,
of the most rewarding experiences I had as part of this project was into 2026. So in the second year of it, around the time of song 440, I think it must have been, I was at the Manchester Folk Festival, and at playing there at the English Folk Expo, part of it was Ferran Oriols. He's a Catalan musician, and we bumped into each other in the street. I was on my way to my showcase, he was on his way to his, but we recognized each other, and he offered to join me on stage and to play some Catalan guitar
oh
along
wow,
to my English ballads and vice versa. And it was just so brilliant. Then, subsequently to the collaboration, we discovered a mutual fascination for bird song and migratory bird populations. And we just kept in touch, and it's turned into a wonderful sharing of cultures. And I think that's such a much more positive story to tell than all the times you do hear about people ripping off someone else's language or culture. It is actually possible to do it in a constructive way.
absolutely. Talking of birds, have you read? I'd highly recommend people a book called "Singing Like Larks." Have you come across this
Oh yeah,
book?
yeah. I met is it Andrew Millam? Yeah,
Andrew
at
Millam, yeah.
King's Place. He did a sort of launch of the book and sang songs a cappella and with his guitar in
Nice.
between the readings of the chapters, and
Oh,
it was so
lovely.
inspiring and such a lovely guy as well. He's a trained forest school teacher
That's right.
and
Yeah.
spends time with kids, bringing them up in the musical and the natural tradition.
That's right. It's a book called Singing Like Larks, A Celebration of Birds in Folk Song. And I was
Yeah.
surprised how much I was expecting, not that this is a bad thing, I was expecting more on the songs than on the birds. And it turned out it was more on the birds than the folk song,
Yeah.
which was a pleasant surprise. And I really enjoyed the book. Yeah, highly recommend Andrew. And I did meet him briefly. He turned up at a gig I did with Culverake or with
Yeah.
George Sansom. The two things I do is George Sansom and Culverake. And he turned up at a gig I did and somewhere and had a nice, not long enough chat with him
Mm.
about it all. But yeah, anyway, it's a birds and folk song. There you go.
I look forward to him recording an album someday because he got a great voice, and in the live context, I could hear it without any sort of processing or anything, and it would sound great on a proper LP. So I hope he gets a producer and makes something that people can go and listen to.
Absolutely, should be an accompanying album to the book.
Mm. Yeah. Oh, well, that's one of the other most inspiring things that the project has done for me is that, in those slightly more desperate scenarios when I don't know what song I'm going to sing and I need some source of inspiration, I'll look to authors or singers all over the place. And had I not started this project, I would not have come across, say, the voice of Chris Foster, who's a slightly sort of maybe softer version of
I love
Martin
Chris
Party, for
Foster.
instance.
Yeah,
Um,
I've known Chris a long time, and
oh,
he's
brilliant.
one of my favourite singers. And
Yeah.
his guitar playing is just wonderful,
Yes.
and his
It's
approach to the songs is really lovely.
yeah. It's been I mean, if anyone out there is thinking, they've learned all the folk music that there is to learn and there's no more, I would recommend trying this sort of project because
Yeah,
being forced to pick up something new every day sends you in the direction of in really surprising directions. And another voice was Vin Garbett, whose version of Boulevard just sort of leapt out at me one day, and
nice.
I'd never heard of this guy, and I
Wow,
thought, wow, this voice is one I really have to find out more about. And you go and
nice.
research the biography and realize what interesting lives there are out there.
Yeah, I met Vin once briefly. Band I used to be in, the Dovetail Trio. We supported him once at a gig in Birmingham, and it was magical because he was such a
Mm.
funny man. He just on
Yeah,
the off the fly he'd come out with the like jokes we couldn't hope to dream of if we thought about them for 10 years,
yeah,
sort of things.
yeah.
It was like, oh, I can't remember what it was. It had me and Jamie from the Dove Train and sort of collapsed with laughter for half an hour. He referred to the singer Meatloaf as the artist formerly known as Mince, which is one of
Right.
the greatest things
I
we'd
love
heard
that.
of. Jamie and I are very fans of crab jokes, and that was like the best crab joke I've ever heard.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was a wonderful performer
Yeah.
of songs. Just
Yeah.
such a wonderful way with words and things.
Yeah.
It's a sad loss when we lost him.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think there isn't a downside to sort of listening to as much as possible, and not just folk music. Listening to all kinds of music, jazz,
Mm.
blues, and whatever, all genres. It all sort of, one may not, even though I listen to a lot of jazz, which I don't at the moment, but even if, for example, I listen to a lot of jazz, you wouldn't necessarily hear a lot of jazz influences in the way I play the concertina or something.
Sure.
But it all sort of impacts upon the way you think about music and the way you think about songs and things and just music in general. I think,
Yeah.
yeah, we shouldn't restrict ourselves to just folk music.
Well, one sort of one result of trying to saturate my brain in music all day, every day for the past 5 years to try and learn these songs is because time is a zero-sum game. It's only so much time. There is a negative effect here where I basically had to prioritize ruthlessly on a number of things, and I actually had my first child in the middle of the 2023 attempt,
Oh,
and that
wow.
was a moment where I realized, okay, I will not be able to do this project if it takes me more than, say, 20 minutes
Yeah.
on any day. I have to learn the songs dead quick and get them tracked, and then I have to return to my duties. And certainly when I then also resurrected my band Stornoway, because we'd been on a hiatus and we suddenly had all these songs we wanted to track. I couldn't do all three of those things at the same time whilst holding down a day job.
Yeah.
So there are,
Life happens and you have to prioritize.
yeah,
Absolutely. We
yeah,
get this. I get this.
yeah. And
Yeah.
I would love, I'd
You,
love
you, you could have done 6 months of lullabies and children's
True.
songs.
Yeah, yeah. There's ways of parceling up the multiple projects in ways that benefit all of them or some of them. But
Yeah.
yeah, if the project had occurred to me, say 10 years ago, when I maybe was a bit freer, I would have got it first time. But in some ways, it would have been less satisfying and rewarding because it's rising to the scale of the challenge and then accomplishing it has really been the reason it's now turned into a successful ritual. So I'm 495 days in, and I don't want to stop when I get to 500. A lot of people have asked me if that's my target, because I blew through 365. Do I get to 500 and stop? Do I go to 730, which would be 2 years? Do I
Yeah,
do 1,000
I was
days
about
or
to
just
say 730 is 2 years, so
yeah?
keep going. I mean, the Roud Index currently sits at 48,799. Just keep
Yeah.
going.
Well, that's another interesting challenge has been whether I reuse indices. There are at least one occasion last year where I learned a song and then I learned what turned out to be the same song according to Steve Roud.
Ah,
But, the melody and the lyrics were totally different. It was just that they were about pretty much the same characters in the same
the
narrative
same
happening
subject
in the same
matter,
place.
kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah, Steve. I don't know how he's done it, but I mean, I've found loads of mistakes in the Roud Index, and he's happy to be corrected because
Okay.
it makes for a more informed and corrected
Hmm.
index.
Yeah.
But he doesn't like it when I give him a long list of corrections and
Yeah.
clarifications, and
Yeah.
but he
Done
says.
over a pint.
But he sort of
One song at a
obligingly
time.
says, "Well, thank you very much. I'll change these then."
Yeah.
But yeah, it happens. He's been doing this on his own for 56 years.
Yeah.
And so there must be mistakes because if he's indexing a new book and he goes through it and he says, "Well, what's this song?" He's got to go through the index and find to see if another version of this song has already been indexed,
That's
and
it.
mistakes happen,
Yeah.
and or not well, mistakes happen, but then also yes, there might be a song that on the surface level bears no relation to another song, but Steve looks at it and he's somehow able to go, well, it's a different place name, different character names, but that's clearly the same plot as
Yeah. Well, collected in the same
735.
place or evolved from the same original seed
Yeah,
of the song. Yeah.
but then some songs will have the same. There might be two completely different songs that stem from the same source song, but
Yeah.
Steve Roud has given them different numbers. But
Interesting.
sometimes he'll give them the same number because they've stemmed from the same original source. And so it's not. Whenever I ask Steve a question, his first thing he always says is, "It's not a simple answer."
Yeah. Of
And so,
course.
yeah, it's very easy to find to sort of come across something that you think is totally different, and then turns out
Yeah.
actually it's the same round number.
Well, the other thing that doesn't have a simple answer and has been asked of me many times in the course of this project, because the audience, as it has grown, has taken in a lot of people who wouldn't call themselves folk fans, and they've just sort of stumbled across my project as a musician project, or um, as a social media phenomenon, but they don't know anything else about folk music. And they'll ask in the comments, or they'll get in touch and say, "So what is folk music? And how do you choose your songs?"
Oh,
And then
yeah,
I'll have to work really hard to come up with a response that's meaningful to them. And so for a lot of people, folk is anything with an acoustic guitar, or sometimes they call it rural music, or
right.
revival scenes where you could dance to it. There's all these different ways of defining folk, and I haven't really come up with a consistent, one size fits all definition. But something like it's music written by the people for the people to hear and perform. That usually gets them something of a satisfying answer.
Yeah,
What's your
that's sort
take
of
on it?
a sort of a good nudge in the right direction, I guess,
Yeah,
towards
yeah,
this sort of minefield of what is folk music.
yeah.
And I don't really have anything an answer that is any more or less comprehensive than that. Really, I mean
Okay.
that's a pretty good base level comprehensive answer. Steve Roud has a kind of get out of jail free clause. I mean, it's in his book, Focusing in England. I think one of the things that opens the book, I think, and he did tell me in an interview, he said, a folk song is a song sung by a folk singer, and a folk singer is someone who sings folk songs, which
Okay.
it's a cyclical thing, but
Yeah,
but you kind of you understand what he means almost instantly, even if you don't agree
yeah,
with him. You know,
yeah,
it's kind of almost anything is a folk song
yeah.
if you
Fair
want it to
enough.
be. I used to be part of a folk club down in Lewes in Sussex, and
Yes.
that folk club is no longer around. There were two, and one of them is still going. Um, and we had like someone did a floor spot, and they sang "Somewhere Over the Rainbow," and
Oh,
everyone sang along. And my dad at the end said, "Oh, proper folk music,"
yeah.
and they said, "Really? Why?" And dad said,
Oh,
"Well, we all know it."
yeah.
And if we all know it, then it's a folk. I think that's why there was a slight bit of contention on John Bowden's project when
Mm,
he included Mercedes Benz, Janis
mm,
Joplin.
yeah.
I think his answer was probably, "We all know it. Therefore, if the folk know it, then surely it's a folk song."
Yeah,
You know,
well, I was faced with exactly that situation on the Oxford May morning recently. So I'm very firmly from the town side of that city, but it's an
right?
occasion on which town and gown meet on the bridge at the foot of Magdalen Tower, where the choristers come out, and they are from Gown. They're the institution. They're singing the Christian tradition down at the people who are all kind of quite drunk after a night out in Cowley, and they're all dressed in leaves in their hair. They're doing the dancing and things, but everyone comes together in this fine balance as they sing "Summa is common in,"
Oh yeah,
which is I would say has elements of both, and then also a Latin hymn, which references nature in many interesting ways. But the third song they picked this year for the first time was really quite a surprise. It was again "Somewhere Over the Rainbow." And everyone around me was like, "Whoa, mind blown!" I don't know how the pastor of the college would have allowed this choice, because it's a good 800 years younger as a song than anything else they've ever sung. But it worked the magic, and
yeah.
people were in tears, and they all realized they had this thing in common, and
It's the
it was just
communal
amazing.
aspect of it all, isn't it? It's like football chants. That's technically folk music, I think,
Yeah, sure.
because there's the folk are singing them together
Yes.
in en masse. There's that,
And to
and
think about what will be the next sort of generation of folk music, there are songs being written today, which, if they are prolific enough, ubiquitous enough, and about broad enough topics that can be understood by enough people in a meaningful way, then surely that's folk, and it could be as soon as 10 years' time. They've
Yeah.
permeated the culture.
I mean, yeah. Just a side note, I think Jennifer Reed's doing a lot of work on like modern or current folklore as opposed to like old
Okay.
folklore. So there's
Yeah.
that sort of thing. But then, yeah. But then I guess if I want a sort of jokey answer to what is a folk song, I tend to now say if it's got a Roud number, it's a folk song,
Yeah.
because that's
Great.
what's because Steve Roud, he's not doing. I've been telling this to a lot of people recently who ask this sort of thing. Um, the collectors of Cecil Sharp, Baring Gould, all these people, some of them, and Baring Gould was quite good actually at collecting whatever he found, whatever was sung,
Yeah.
he would collect it. In Lancashire, Anne Geddes Gilchrist was very good at that. She was just in collecting. She was happy to collect and note down whatever was being sung. But there
Yes.
are some collectors who were specifically looking for what they called the old songs,
I
what
see.
they refer to, what they consider to be the folk songs. And so
Yeah.
there was this level of censorship going on by what the collectors wanted to collect, and then level of censorship in terms of what the singers chose to sing to the
Yeah.
collectors.
That's it.
And
Yeah.
some singers had music hall songs in the repertoire, but chose not to sing them to the collectors. Some chose to sing them to the
I
collectors, but the
see.
collectors didn't want to know. So there's far too many levels of censorship for my liking within
Yeah.
the collecting sphere. But what
Yeah.
Steve Roud is doing is he's indexing all of the songs that the folk sang, not
Very
just the
good.
folk songs.
Yes.
Which is why, and this is my favourite fun fact about the Roud Index, how much is that doggy in the window has a Roud number.
Very good.
It was collected once in the 60s from an old woman who had obviously
Uh,
heard it on the radio
yeah.
and
Yeah.
sang it to a collector. She said, I also sing this. And she sang it and they wrote it down. And so it's got a Roud number. Who
Yep.
knows? We may
That
do it on the Patreon
counts.
one day. The history of that one. It was written by
Let's
so
do
and
it.
so and sung by whatever her name was. But
Yeah.
nevertheless, so I think for Steve Roud, it's a broad church. What is a
Yeah.
folk song? It's a
Good.
song sung by a folk singer. And what is a folk singer? It's a singer who
Yeah.
sings folk songs.
Yeah. Okay. Well, then that's good news for me because I fit in that tent and I can
Yeah,
call myself a folk singer. But at the
exactly.
start of this project, I was embarrassed to ask myself that question and realized I didn't really have any sort of laurels to rest on. And so yeah, thank you for
Yeah,
that definition.
that's quite right. So yeah, so you, as you've already said, you did eventually manage to do an entire year, which was
Yes.
2025, 365, and you've carried on. So yeah, so what was the current tally for
495.
495?
My
Wow.
most recent, if I consult my database, was I'm a rover and seldom sober.
Ah, yes.
Before that, Stately Southerner, which was a really good excuse to listen to the singing of one of my now favorite duos. And of course, Maddie Pryor's done that one. So the duo was Dave Webber and Annie Fenterman.
Ah, lovely stuff.
What
Yeah.
what a brilliant pairing of vocals. And then Maddie Pryor's version is with Tim Hart on banjo. Those are two of my favorite recordings of any music ever. And
Nice.
I had the pleasure of learning the song, which means playing those recordings on loop, say 20 times, to get the fine points of the melody and where you have to take a breath, for instance.
Yeah.
And then picking up the words is a much longer exercise.
Yes, of course. It's never a simple thing.
Yeah.
And so yeah, when the project finished, I noticed that you did a big New Year's Eve performance. Was it some kind of
Yes.
celebratory concert or something?
Yeah, well, these celebrations started back in November, actually. I did a fundraiser for a church who happened to have seen me online and got in touch and said, could I come sing some songs, including one about Kidlington, which is where the church was.
Oh, nice.
Kidlington's a small village north of Oxford. And so I had to do a bit of research to see if there were any songs that mentioned it. The nearest I could find was a song about Woodstock, which is pretty much the next village up. It's more of a town than a village. And then plenty of songs that reference Oxford as well. So I did a set for those guys for which I had deliberately learned at least two new songs, and I was able to talk to them about the project. And I realized as I was doing the set that I really enjoyed discussing and co-locating the whole experience and telling people why I'd learned their songs specifically. So I got booked on the strength of that for a whole number of other things. One of which was East Anglian Folklore Centre in February this year. I did a witch-themed catalogue for them because they're all about the occult. And I had, as I said earlier, recently seen that play, Coven. So I sang a bunch of witch songs, and then in March I was up at the Manchester Folk Festival. So it's really gaining momentum now that people have seen that I was true to my word, and I did 365 days in a row. Nothing can stop me.
It's like proof of concept in a way, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's just, you have to prove that it's a thing. I'm doing that with the
absolutely.
podcast now that I've done. Well, I did one last year, but I've done 2 years of it now, and so now onwards, I'll be doing some live podcast episodes at folk festivals. I've got
Yes,
6 episodes to do this summer, and I didn't really want to do any live ones until I'd proved to myself that
of
I could
course,
do the project in general for a couple of years.
of course.
It's more proof of concept for yourself, isn't it, rather than for other people?
Yes.
So you have to
You
prove to
you need
yourself.
to be able to hold up that calling card and say, so people don't say that's the guy who tried and failed to sing 365 songs. You can say no, I've actually done what I said I was going to do. And I think now I am the world record holder as I went through the full year and took that perhaps crown from John Bowden, because no one else, as far as I know, has done a song a day for a whole year other than him. So I need to push hard enough and far enough to say 1,000 that no one else will dare challenge my title. If anyone else has started out there, I've got at least a 400-day head start on them. So I'll
Yeah,
keep
I'm
going.
just looking up Andy Turner's folk song a week to
Of
see
course, yeah,
what he got to.
yeah.
I
It's
think.
well over 500 in his case, I think.
Let me see if I can find the number. I don't think he's unless he listens to the Patreon so on the podcast, so he might hear this. Um, I
Hi,
want.
Andy.
Yeah, hi Andy. I wonder if he's done one. I think if you go to his website, the one that comes up on the page on the homepage is December the 15th of 2025. Yeah,
Yeah.
so quite recently, um, week 328.
Oh, that's yeah.
So numerically, you're much higher
I
than
thought,
him.
yeah, I thought it was well over 500, but maybe that was my creating a false extra expanded target to make
Maybe,
sure
yeah.
that I
But he
stayed
did.
scared long
But
enough.
he did do while shepherds were watching, which is a
Yeah,
different kind of while shepherds watched
sure.
song
Yeah.
for Christmas, obviously. Then, so, but yeah, his work is phenomenal as well, and he's a Patreon subscriber and a long-time podcast listener, as well as a long-time friend of mine. I play in a Cayley band with Andy,
Oh, brilliant. Yeah.
and so yeah, one of my all-time favorite people and singers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah, and what a fantastic project he did as well with
Yeah.
because John's project was mainly about just the recording of the song. There was
Yeah.
on the website he did write a little bit about each song, like a paragraph.
Yeah.
Whereas
It tended to
Andy's,
be with help from someone else, I felt,
that's
someone in
right,
his team. Yeah. Yeah.
there was someone who's helped out a bit. Whereas Andy's tends to write almost a page about each
Yeah.
song, but he did do a song a week, which gave him time to
Yeah.
write this page worth of stuff.
Yes. Well, I have tried to keep up something of a sort of essay or blog
So
approach,
yeah,
and
I was going to ask,
yeah.
did you do anything like that as well? Is
Well,
that available somewhere?
for the first year, it wasn't part of the methodology. I was just focused on getting the recordings done, and once I had proven the concept, as you say, and done a whole year, I wanted to then build on it. So I started the blog on, well, sometime in mid-January this year, around 375, and I did keep it up for a good couple of months, and I was writing quite in-depth articles, but then things got carried away, and I'm behind on that. But the beauty of Substack is you can keep adding, and you can just deactivate the sort of reminder element, notification element
Yeah.
for fans. So I do have a fair number of subscribers on there. And when the time comes, I'll catch up. I'll write all the backlog of articles, and they won't have to be disturbed by 400 pings in the middle of the night with their phone.
That's
They
right.
can just catch up anytime. I wanted to serve as an archive and a sort of reference, so that it can teach people out there, but it doesn't necessarily have to happen at the same time as the learning, I feel.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, Substack good for that. Carl Sinfield, who does the Sing Yonder books,
Yes, what a legend.
he has a Substack where he goes into a lot more depth about the songs than he can write on the
Yeah,
page
yeah.
in the book. And fantastic. Yeah, we'll put a link to the Substack in the
Thank
episode
you.
notes for this. And so, I guess to round things off, is there a way to? So, are all the recordings available somewhere? Is it on YouTube or where's the
Hmm.
repository of your work on this?
Yes, I tried to make it as accessible as possible, and so we are on YouTube for all 495 of the songs, as well as Instagram, which I find so many of the young generation of folk community members are sort of engaging, but then
Yep.
also TikTok. TikTok's phenomenally
Oh, you've gone to
accessible. You
TikTok.
don't even need to have an account to watch them, and I've got more followers there than anywhere else, and they
Oh,
engage all
wow.
the time. It's quite an exhausting one to have added to my list. So whilst you can't get the first, I think, 200 of the project on TikTok, because I only started on there 6 months into the thing, that's the platform on which it's grown the fastest, and I've been pretty shocked by that actually.
Dear, I'm gonna have to have an in the round TikTok account, and
I think it's
I'm gonna
worth
have
it.
I'm gonna have
Yeah,
to take the plunge. I was
yeah.
holding off, but we'll see.
Then
We'll
just to
see.
get back to technology for a second, in
Oh
case
yeah,
this helps you go follow through on that. The tool that I used to post to all of them simultaneously was Buffer. Buffer lets you send a video of up to 6 minutes onto multiple platforms at the same time, posting the same text, so there's a nice
ah,
consistency. But the other thing these days is edits from Instagram. I use that to actually film and edit the performance and
right.
add a caption. And then edits has a nice button for each of the platforms, so it doesn't take more than 2 or 3 clicks per sort of medium, and that's really helped save time.
Excellent. Yeah, I've just found it on YouTube. I always find YouTube slightly odd, as awkward sometimes with people's channels because it's not just you can't just find the list of videos. It's like each channel has a home page and there's a videos page and a playlist page. And so
Yeah,
we've had this problem on the podcast is that the podcast goes out on YouTube as well. And I've had some people come to me and say, you've only got a certain number of the episodes up there because
yeah,
the first thing that comes up in the home page for one's channel on YouTube is a section labeled for you, and it tries
I
to give you
see.
the things it tries to
Yeah,
give
yeah,
you, and
yeah.
it gives you like 5 episodes of the podcast not in the right order and not
That's
sequential.
right.
But
Yeah,
if you go down to on the main podcast in the route, if you go to the videos page, that gives you everything in the right order.
that's
And I was
right.
looking at yours, and I'm not
Similar thing,
entirely
I
sure the
imagine.
videos page does. I
Yeah.
think the videos page has your 2024 songs only.
Oh, yes, of course. Yeah, we were in a different format for that one,
Yeah, but
and
if you but on the
yeah,
YouTube channel for you, it's under shorts.
yes,
On the
that's right.
shorts page, it has there we go, day 495, and if you
Yeah,
order by oldest first, day January 1, the January man. There we go. That was
yes,
a
there
year
we
and a
go.
half ago.
Yeah,
And so yeah, I'll try and put if I can put the link to youtube.com/ at 365 days of folk / shorts,
yes,
and that's the direct link to the entire sort of repository of these things. So we'll put
that's
that
it.
in. We'll put the link to that in there so you can hear all of them.
Thanks
And
so much, Matt.
what music to my eyes, if you pardon
Yes.
the or the mangling of a couple of expressions. It's it's just great to see like a
Well,
long video list of songs like that.
yeah. Well,
Like
we
I
we
look at my podcast and go, oh, it looks great. This long list of episodes that I've done.
yes, we're ear witnesses to the ongoing traditions of folk ballad learning.
That's right. How many more things can popular phrase can we mangle? So yeah, what does the future hold? Apart from carrying on with day 3, 4,
Mm.
with 496, etc. What does the future hold for this? What have you got coming up? Any big things coming up, or is it just carrying on
Mm.
as is?
Well, I really value the ritual that I've now built. I get into a genuine sort of physiological stress if I haven't by, say, 3 in the afternoon heard some folk music, and that's a really good stage to have got to now. Whereas, say, before lockdowns, before this project, I was someone who might go a week without actually remembering to listen to music, which
Right.
it's quite weird to think about. So I've got my ritual in place, and I hope never to jettison that. Even though I have a very busy time coming up with my band, so apart from playing several of the festivals with this project, which will be also festival in Warwickshire, Deershed Festival in Yorkshire. I've got Love Trails Festival in the Gower in Wales, and plenty being booked for next year as well. I've got my calendar with Stornoway is quite busy with releasing an album in September.
Oh
It's
wow.
called Beyonder, which will be full of folky songs. In fact, there are a couple of old traditional ballads on there, and it's out on the 25th of September with a tour to go with that, pretty much all through the summer and through October and February. So it's a very, very musical year coming up, and I will have to start learning some of these ballads in the backs of tour buses.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll need to approach that with a decent amount of preparation and make sure I get enough sleep.
Yeah. Sleep is crucial.
Yes. And the other thing that's crucial is just the support that people send in, and every single comment or engagement I encounter just fills my heart with joy and
I
helps
know
me remember what
it's
it's all
this
for.
odd thing I have with the podcast sometimes is that it's like we shouldn't do this because we want the interaction, the likes, the comments, the clicks. It's that kind of social media addiction sort of thing.
Mm,
But at the same time, we're doing this because we want people to engage with things. But it's that balance of we're doing this because we want our work to get out there and
yeah,
engage with people. But we can't let it sort of that social media addiction, that like addiction, sort
yeah,
of overtake things. We can't be doing this just for the clicks and the
of
likes
course.
and the things. And it's a balance. And if if an episode of mine doesn't get looked at or downloaded much, I do get a bit sad. Where I think, no, it's not why I'm doing this. I'm doing this
Yep,
just for the sake of getting the information out there,
exactly.
rather than how many people are listening.
That's it.
And so yeah, we mustn't let that interaction addiction sort of take over. But
That's it. That's it.
oh man, what a world we live in.
Of course.
But yeah, what a fantastic project, and
Thank
yeah,
you.
long may it continue. Get to at least 7:30,
Okay.
and
That's the
then
challenge.
see if you can carry on.
The gauntlet
And
has been thrown.
yeah, and so yeah, we're going to be doing 3 songs on the Patreon. We might as well tell our listeners on the podcast what they're going to be. So are these 3 songs 3 that you have already covered on the big project?
That's right. So we've got the Royal Blackbird, we have Blackwater Side, and just remind me that
How blithe ilk
how,
morn was I to see,
of course.
which I emailed that song title to all of my historical pool, and they all went,
Mm.
"Hey, what's that?"
Yeah.
So it's been nice. I managed to find someone who can do it. But yeah, so tomorrow or this week of this episode going out, tomorrow if you're listening on the day, we'll have the first of your 3 songs, which is Royal Blackbird. History will be from John Molden. John hasn't come on the podcast yet because in the first 300 round numbers, there's barely any Irish songs, and John's
Of
one
course.
of the foremost sort of Irish experts. But he's done that one for us. That's round 2,375. A nice.
Hmm.
I'll never get to that one on the main podcast. I've told people this before. Listeners are probably fed up with me saying this, but if I do the podcast at my current speed for 40 years, I will get to round 1,200.
Okay.
So it's nice to have ones higher
Yeah.
than that. And then Blackwater Side 2 weeks later. Hopefully,
Yes.
it'll go out in the week starting the 25th of May. One of my favourite. I'm sorry to pick favourites, but my favourite historical contributor to the podcast, Vic Gammon,
Yes.
has just done for me the history of Blackwater Side, round 564. If anyone doesn't know Blackwater Side, that's the sort of the Irish variant, but it's the same round number as a lot of the English and American variants, which are down by the old riverside, the lily white hand, all
Yes.
that sort of thing. And then
Great.
3 weeks later, Martin Nail will come on the podcast. Martin on the Patreon. Martin has done 3 songs histories for the podcast. He did the Lord Gregory, Lass of Rock Royal. He did the Cruel Brother, and he did Lord Randall in season 1. And yeah, Martin jumped at the chance to do How Blithe Ilk Morn Was I to See,
Oh,
because
wonderful.
at least in the title, if nothing else, it is linked to Round 92, which has already been bookmarked for Martin, Broom of the Cowden Owls.
Yes, exactly. That's the reason I'm so fascinated by this song, because I mentioned earlier there was a couple of examples where I ended up singing the same song twice without realizing it.
Yeah.
And this is one example where the Broom of Cowden, there's a really well-loved version by the Watersons where they sing, Broom of Cowden.
Yes, and that's Round 92.
Yes. And then this is something slightly different.
It is. Also, it's Round 8,709.
Yeah.
So it's a nice higher number to cover.
Yeah.
So over the next month and a half on the Patreon, with gaps in between, we'll be covering those 3 songs from you and history from John Malden, Vic Gammon, and Martin Nail. And that's going to be fantastic. I'm sure it will be.
Yeah,
but until then, until tomorrow, over on Patreon, Ollie Steadman, thanks for giving us your time to chat about the project. And thanks very much.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you, Matt. See you again soon.
And there we go. That was my interview with Ollie Steadman, ostensibly about his 365 Days of Folk project, but obviously the way people talk, lots of tangents and all quite interesting, I thought. If you want to hear more from Ollie in the foreseeable future in the Rowd sphere, you can sign up to our Patreon, and Ollie will, as we said just now, Ollie will be on for 3 episodes for 3 songs that he has chosen. As well, I'll just repeat them. Round 2375, the Irish song Royal Blackbird. 564, Round 564, the Blackwater Side, which is an Irish version of Down by the Old Riverside, or the Lily White Hand. And then 8709, a song called How Blithe Ilk Morn Was I to See. Looking forward to those 3 very much. So patreon.com/intherowd, and you can sign up for either £5 or £10 per month and receive a myriad of back catalogue bonus episodes plus regular bonus episodes going forward. Otherwise, that's it from me. There may well be another bonus episode, another interview, sometime towards the end of May. Still up in the air slightly, but will be nice. Otherwise, I hope you join me on the 24th of June for the first episode of Season 7. I won't tell you who the guests are yet, but I can tell you that the first episode will be on the song Rowd 61, which is child ballad number 96, The Gay Goshawk. And more child ballads will ensue, plus one Christmas song and our first Robin Hood ballad. You'll either get very excited or not. Robin Hood ballads will come to them at the end of the season. The last one of the season is our first ever Robin Hood ballad. However, I'll give you all a break now for another few weeks. So, take care and have a good break from me. Cheers.